On the phone, we have a gentleman who played for my beloved Miami Dolphins. Even though I'm from Chicago, the Dolphins were my team because they had my favorite quarterback of all time. He protected his back for many years. A guy who should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Richmond Webb. How you doing today, Richmond?
Hey, morning, David. How you doing, sir?
Doing great here. I see that you grew up in Texas. How did you end up going to A&M?
You know, I was heavily recruited out of high school, and back then it was the Southwest Conference, and I think the Big Eight, and I think A&M was just the right place for me. I kind of settled between Oklahoma State and A&M, and after playing, I kind of figured I wanted to stay in the state, and I chose A&M, and I think it was the best decision I made.
What other schools were after you?
Everybody in the Southwest Conference, so you could say Texas, Texas A&M, Baylor, SMU, U of H, and then Oklahoma, Oklahoma State. Those were the schools, you know, I took visits to, but I got letters from all over the country, but I didn't want to go too far, so those, I kind of focused on the Big Eight Southwest Conference. That's pretty much where I put mainly my focus.
What was it like playing for Jackie Sherrill?
What was the right plan?
Yeah, for Jackie Sherrill.
As far as what? When you say what was the right plan?
What was he like as a coach?
Oh, he's players coach, and you know, I think I kind of got there at the beginning where it was, you know, they were just starting to turn the corner and make their transition. True freshman year, we won 3 Southwest Conference championships in a row. Went to the Cotton Bowl 3 times, and then, you know, we had the transition from Coach Sherrill to R.C. Slocum. But he was a players coach, great coach, and I just saw him a few weeks ago. So great coach, and he also coached Marino too as well at Pittsburgh.
Did you guys share any stories, you and Dan, about Coach Sherrill?
Yeah, we over the time, you know, when I first got there, you know, that was one of the things Coach Sherrill said, you know, make sure you take care of my guy Danny, you know, because he had coached him at Pitt. And when I got there, you know, shared stories. It was similar, different universities, but similar as far as how he conducted himself. And it seemed like the players that played for him at Pitt kind of felt the same way that we did at A&M. So just a great coach, and we did share some stories. So it was kind of like, even though we didn't go to the same school, you could kind of relate with some of the stuff that you did because you just knew Coach Sherrill.
What was Slocum like compared to Sherrill?
Slocum was my recruiting coach. He was defensive coordinator and great defensive mind. And after, you know, Coach Sherrill resigned or whatever, you know, he took over, but he kind of just grabbed the reins and just took on and just kept everything going. So he was a good coach. I was under him my last 2 years, and you know, I believe he's the winningest coach in the Southwest Conference, something like that. So he had an excellent career as well at Texas A&M. Still comes back, and it's like once you're a part of that university, even though you're not coaching or anything, you're still considered family. So I see him at a lot of A&M events and stuff like that.
Were you ever part of that 13-man?
It's the 12th man.
12th man, sorry.
12th, yeah. 12th man is, we had a 12th man kickoff team, and basically what the 12th man stands for is, if you notice any Texas A&M games, the student section normally stands the entire game, and basically that's why we call it the 12th man, and it's basically just symbolizing that if we needed somebody to come in to help finish the game, whatever, that's their role. So that's how the 12th man kind of got started, and it's a tradition from years and years ago, and that's kind of what it symbolizes.
Did you have any idea the Dolphins were going to draft you?
I can kind of remember draft day, and I had a couple teams call. Miami was one of the teams that called, and they said, you know, if I was there, you know, they were going to take me in, and there was a couple of other teams. I think the maybe the Raiders or Kansas City, and they say, we think you'll be gone, but if you're there, we're going to take you. And then you start watching the draft, which, back in 1990, it was a lot different. I was at home. I think only a couple of players went to New York, so now it's like a big production now where you have an opportunity to go in the first round. Normally, you're up in New York Thursday night or whatever. But it was speculation about San Diego, and so when they took Junior Seau, I think the commentators speculated a little bit about maybe the Bears. They had the 6th pick, and they took Mark Harriet, and then the 7th pick was Andre Ware out of U of H, run and shoot to Detroit. 8th pick was Chris Singleton to New England. And as soon as they picked him, my phone was ringing, and it was Coach Shula on the phone. He said, "Hey, are you ready to be a Dolphin?" And I said, "Yes, sir." It was just like a big relief, weight off my shoulders, because even though you go in the first round, it's pretty nerve-wracking until you get that call. And once I got that call, it was like a weight off my shoulders. So I was definitely excited to be going to Miami.
What was Coach Shula like when you joined them at training camp?
Probably one of the toughest coaches I ever played for, but great coach, one of the all-time greats. Maybe the greatest coach to ever coach the game. But I can remember as a rookie after I got drafted, they took me down to the NBC affiliate station in Dallas, and they said, "What do you think about Coach Shula? What do you think he is?" And I said, "Oh, he looked like he wears shades and he's got a nice tan, look like he hang out on the beach." And my position coach made a statement, said, "Boy, is he in for a rude awakening." And I got there and I said, "Oh my goodness, let me just keep my mouth shut," because I just stuck my foot in my mouth there. He was a tough coach, but he was a great coach. He demanded excellence, discipline, and I think those were a lot of the key to why he had the success for so many years. Is, he established a pattern early on and just stuck to it, and that formula worked, and there was no need to deviate from it.
What was amazing about him as a coach is how he changed over the years. I mean, he had the Colts with Johnny Unitas, had great receivers in Raymond Berry and Money Moore. Then he goes to the Dolphins, he has great running backs, and then he gets Marino, and then he changes his whole attack, becomes a passing team.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of times I think that's what makes you a great coach. You look at what you have, and then you try to maximize on that player's talent, or put that player in the best position to get the maximum return out of him. And like you said, back in the 70s, with Zonka and all that, they just pounded out Mercury Morris. They ran the ball, just tough physical football. It's that, Greasy was a quarterback. And, he's one of the all-time greats, with the Dolphins. And then, like you say, you get Marino, and it's just aerial passing attack. And I mean, he comes in and just shatters records that, they were just unheard of at the time. You had the Marx brothers. So not only did he get Marino, but he complimented players around him to surround him, to put him in a situation to where he could be successful. And I think that's just a mark of a great coach. You're studying your team, seeing what the needs are, and then you say, okay, what is this player's strengths or whatever? I think we put him in the best position to help us win. And I think he just had a knack for recognizing that, and that's why he's a success. Did
you enjoy pass blocking more or run blocking?
I did whatever they needed me to do. I think as a lineman, I do think you like to run the ball a little bit more. But at the time, when you got a guy like Dan Marino, you just do what's called, and you don't really focus on it. Your job is to just execute whatever that, the quarterback calls or whatever sent in from the sideline. So I think as long as you kind of keep that mindset, you'll be fine. But I did both. I came from Texas A&M, and we really just used to pound it out, run it, and then just switched over to the Dolphins where we threw the ball a lot more. So whatever it takes to win, that's kind of the way I always approached it.
There's always an adjustment period for players where it takes them a little while to get used to the NFL. I mean, you started pretty much right from the start with the Dolphins, make a Pro Bowl your rookie year. Was it that easy for you?
I'm not gonna say it was easy. I think one of the things was I had a great position coach, John Sandusky, and what I think some of the keys are, especially when you're a high draft round pick, is to get into camp early because the installation is like nonstop. Every day they're studying, installing the playbook, and the playbook is, 6-8 inches thick of just plays that you got to get in. So I stayed down there like a month and just worked on, pass blocking and stuff with Coach Sandusky, and I think that was instrumental in a lot of my success early. And then the other thing, I think I missed about a week and a half of training camp, and they got me signed and got in there. So I was able to get reps and being able to adjust to the speed of the game. And then I think we came out, me and Keith Sims, we played the entire preseason. We had like 4 or 5 games, but we only came out for like one series. And, so we got as many reps. And I think that was the thing with, Coach Shula or whatever. He realized he needed to get us ready. And most people, it was unheard of at the time to put 2 rookies on the left side of the offensive line because, that's quarterback's blind side. But hey, that's why Coach Shula is one of the greatest that ever, coached the game. Is he just had a knack for talent, recognizing, and Keith just had a chemistry from day one, and it just worked out for us.
He always had good offensive lines. Back in the 70s with the Dolphins, you had Langer, Kuchenberg, and Larry Little. Then you go to Dwight Stevenson in the 80s, and then like yourself in the 90s. I mean, I think he understood the importance of the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, everything starts up front, offense, defensive line, and the better your lineman is, if you look at the Dolphin honor roll, it's a considerable amount of offensive linemen that's in that honor roll. And it's a reason for that is, I think Coach Shula understood no matter whether we're going to run the ball or we're going to throw the ball, it all starts up front. And if you get those key guys in place and position, it just makes everything else flow smoothly.
What defensive lineman or defensive end gave you the hardest time?
That's an easy one. Bruce Smith, I had to play that guy 2 or 3 times a year sometimes, and just being in the same division, by far he's the toughest one. And, he played the pass extremely well, great pass rusher, and then he's, great against the run, and he's just one of the best players probably ever put a uniform on. And that was the guy that probably gave me the most problems.
Who called the plays on the offense? Was it the offensive coordinator, Coach Shula, or did Dan Marino call most of the plays?
I think the offensive coordinator called them, but Dan had the option of, a lot of times if he recognized the defense, he could check out of that play. If you know what I'm saying, once you read the defense, the way they lined up, if it's not going to be good, he could check out of it. So a lot of times the plays were sent in, except like in 2-minute drill where Dan would call the plays. But the plays were sent in, and then if he didn't like the front or whatever, he could change it to something else. That's basically what he did.
Did he ever check out of a passing play and ran the ball?
I'm sure he did. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure he did. So it was a lot of times it just, if it was 7 men in the box instead of 8 or 9, I'm sure he would check out of it and run the football. So. Yeah, that's a funny question, but yeah, I'm sure he did.
Because Bob Kuchenberg told me that when Marino joined the Dolphins, he would be in there during the offensive meetings. When they went over the passing drills, Marino was there. And when it was time for do the running plays, he would go to the bathroom and take the newspaper with him. Or is that just Kuchenberg being Kuchenberg?
Well, I mean, I don't know. You got to remember Kuchenberg probably caught Dan early on. In the early 80s, and then, I didn't get there to 90, so that could be a true story, but, Coach could be exaggerating a little bit, he knows how to, get a chuckle out of people and make it interesting and make you wonder, is this actually what happened, or is he just yanking my chain a little bit? But that's funny, so I don't know, you got to clarify that with Coach.
What's interesting with the Dolphins is the characters you've had through the years. Kuchenberg, Larry Little, I mean, all these guys, they all have these attitudes, and they're all hysterical. Zonka.
Oh yeah. And you know, one thing I really I've had an opportunity to spend time with those guys that uh, Zonka just has a way of. I mean, he just takes control of the audience when he speaks. I mean, it's just a gift that very few have. But his the way he tells a story or presents the information is just amazing. And you have to be in the room. It's like the teachers pulled out the ruler or something, clapped on the chalkboard and like pay attention. But he doesn't do that. But once he starts telling the story, it's like whatever you're doing, you kind of stop and just focus in on it, because it's almost like he puts you there, even though it was years ago when it happened. So it's almost like he takes you to the game. You're sitting in the stands and you can see it almost actually happen. I mean, he has that type of storytelling ability. So he's one of the best I've heard.
And Larry Little, I mean, he's just hysterical. He'll tell Cooch, he'll tell Zonka to just shut up, and it seems like they all respect Larry. He's like the leader of that team.
Yeah, you know, when you play with guys, you know, that's that camaraderie that you always hear players talk about. Is you know, you spend time in the locker room, and when you start seeing all those guys get together and interact and laugh and stuff like that. If you have ever played any type of sports, whether high school, whatever, you kind of genuinely, okay, you can tell they play together and they're having a good time, and everybody kind of catches up. And for a guy like me that did play with those guys, it's funny because you get to hear them tell the stories, and then you can kind of imagine, because when Coach Shula coached back in the 70s, they talked about how they did 3-a-days, and I just don't know how I could ever made it through 3-a-days during training camp, because we did 2-a-days. And so I know he was a much tougher coach, you know, early on than he was when I got there. So I'm kind of glad I caught Coach Shula when I did, because he was tough enough for me.
Is there a reason why the Dolphins just couldn't get over that hump and go and win a Super Bowl when you were there?
I think 1 or 2 years, I think we had opportunity. Couple years we had injuries at key positions, stuff like that. So it's always a factor or two. If you don't get the home field advantage, 1 year we had it, but we lost to Buffalo. It's just you know, that's the way I kind of analyze it. That we got close, we just didn't get over the hump. But sometimes factors played, and sometimes we just didn't get the job done. So it just depends.
When you retired, did you think to yourself, you know what, I think I could play a couple more years, but I don't know if my body can do it? Or just mentally, were you just tired of it?
Not mentally. I think you just kind of get used to it. It's the norm for you, because you know that's what you do. That's what you've been doing the last. You know, I played 13 years, so that's what you do every year. I think the thing that kind of snuck up on me is how fast it actually happens. From year one, and next thing you know, it seems like you're in, you know, year 8 or 9, and once you start getting 10+ years, that I don't think it's the mental edge. I just think physically, you know, me with injuries and my body start breaking down. Your mind, you keep saying you can do it, but at some point you just got to say, you know what, I've had a good run, and it's time for me to, you know, hang it up. And I think that's what it was for me.
Were you on the field during that famous play when Marino fake spiked the ball and threw for that touchdown pass?
Yes, I was in the game. That was against the Jets. Yes, I was in that game.
Whose idea was that? Was that Dan's idea, the offensive coordinator?
I don't know whose idea it was, because if you look at that play and you look at the offensive lineman, you can tell that we didn't know that they were going to do that. If you look at the reaction of the play, this and that, and so I can remember asking Dan, I think, about why y'all didn't tell us, and they say, well, we didn't tell y'all because y'all would have messed it up. So it was strictly, I think, between the offense coordinator, Dan Marino, and I think Mark Ingram was the receiver. I'm sure all the other receivers knew, but they didn't tell the offensive line. So that's why we looked kind of crazy on that play, because we thought it was just a simple clock play, and then the next thing you recognize, the guy where he stops and he starts like he's rushing again. And he's like, wait a minute, what's going on? So I'm not for sure, but they worked on it. They just didn't tell the offensive line about it.
I used to laugh when Dan Marino did those isotoner commercials, and he talked about giving his linemen the gloves. And then I read that Eric Dickerson would give his linemen Rolex watches here. Did you ever give Dan a hard time and say, listen, look what Eric's doing here?
No, I didn't. I mean, he got us stuff other than isotoner gloves, and I'm just of the fact that I'm appreciative that you do something for me. It's not required. I mean, we're under contract to do a job like he is. That it's always when somebody appreciates what you does and goes a little bit above, what's required. It doesn't matter. It's the thought that counts with me. So I really didn't get into, this guy's doing this for his guys or whatever, because now to me that shows you're not really appreciative of what somebody took time to say, okay, hey, I got this for you. I appreciate it. So I never really tried to get into that. If you gave me something, thank you very much. You really didn't have to do it. So I was appreciative.
What do you think about Dan running the Dolphins now?
I think it's great. I think it's great for, a player of his caliber, for what he did, and to have him to where he can interact with like Tannehill or whatever. Or if you got a guy like that you can just go pick his brain and he's right there at the same organization that he played and set so many records for and this and that, I think it's great.
Do you think there's a little competition there where he sees what John Elway's done with Denver and Ozzie Newsome with Baltimore and says, you know what, I think I could do this too?
I don't think it's competition. Dan and John came in the same draft class. And I don't even know if they got the same title with each NFL team. So it'd be kind of hard to match apples to apples with that. I don't think so. But I think both of them have that. All three of those guys have a competitive edge to be successful. And whatever they jump into, they're going to give it 110%. So I can say that.
When do you think you're going to end up going in the Hall of Fame?
I don't know. I think I got the numbers. I really don't focus on that. The thing I look at, Dave, is there are a lot of guys, like even this year, Charles Haley, Andre Reed just making it in. I mean, those are guys that I respect and some of the greatest players at the game, but yet they had to wait. And when you only put in, 5 or 6 guys a year, some guys going to be first-time ballots, but some guys don't kind of get mixed up in the shuffle. I think I have a legitimate shot. I believe I'll make it, but I don't just dwell on that. I just keep on living. When it happens, it happens. That's the way I kind of look at it.
It seems like it's almost become like a political campaign where they're looking at NFL Network guys, ESPN guys, national guys, and the people who aren't really involved in the media are kind of getting forgotten about.
Well, I mean, it's easier to make a case for those guys because you see them on TV. That's the only thing that's good about being there. And just because you're on there, I mean, the guys that made it in, I don't have a problem with any of those guys that were selected to make it in. I mean, Jerome Bettis, Warren Sapp, I thought he's a great player. Marshall Falk. I mean, they got the numbers. It's just they got in. Shannon Sharps. I mean, I got respect for all those guys. So I'm happy for all of them. I just look at it and say, hey, if they only putting 5 or 6 in at a time, they can only get so many in at a time. So that's the way I look at it.
The thing I don't like they're doing now is they're making the finalists all come to New York or wherever the Super Bowl is and sit in a room, and then they wait for the knock on the door. And I think it's harder. I mean, it's hard enough being at home waiting for that phone call, but to sit in a hotel room and wait for a knock on the door, and if you don't get the knock, then eventually you realize you didn't get in, and then you got to sit there and fly back home. I don't think that's fair to these guys.
Yeah, I didn't know that's how they were doing it now. It would seem like they would just notify the finalists, hey, you made it in or whatever, and fly those guys to New York. But to put 15 guys in there and only knock on 5 or 6 doors, that's not. I didn't know they was doing it that way. And then what if you knock on the wrong guy's door and then you go say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I made a mistake." It's like I didn't know the procedure, and I didn't know it was that way. So, man,
They
okay.
just start. They just started the last couple of years. I think in New York was the first year. So Dave Baker, the president, knocks on the door, and I'm like, and they have it on NFL Network. They have a camera behind them. So when he's opened the door, he's announcing. I'm like, the poor, like you said, the poor 9 other guys or 10 other guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they're sitting in their rooms there, and they got to fly back home.
Yeah, that I didn't know they was doing that. I did not have an idea that they did it that way. So wow. I mean, everything is about making money, and if they think that that's a way they can market something and package it up and get people to, donate sponsorship money and stuff like that. Hey, the NFL is about making money now. They know how to do it. I'm telling you that.
They got to get Marino's left tackle in. They've got to get his top receiver in because, like Clayton said, I mean, name one other Hall of Fame quarterback that doesn't have their receiver in or their left tackle in. It makes no sense.
That's a good point. I can't argue with it. So, like I was saying, Mark, he's good. Clayton is good as far as looking at stuff like that and trending. And when you do apples to apples, that's a great argument right there.
Thank you so much for your time, and tell Dan to send you a case of his new wine.
I'm gonna tell. I didn't know he had wine, so yeah, I'm gonna tell him to send me some wine.
Yeah, I think it's like called Passing Yards or Passing Guy. It's hysterical. I mean, like you said, the guy is successful in anything he does.
Mm-hmm.
Him and Damon Heward are co-owners of the winery.
You said who's
Damon Heward.
Oh, Damon. Quarterback. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Damon is from Washington. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's called Passing Time Winery. It's passingtime.com. And they're getting high ratings. It says they got a 93 for one of these wines.
Really? Okay, I'm going to check it out then.